and as sheriff, I have the power to make the decision, and we're going to change how we do business.
The protocol has changed for mental health calls made to 911. Now the dispatcher will ask questions to determine if a crime is being committed. The communications supervisor will then decide whether to deploy deputies to the scene.
And if it is dispatch, the watch commander, a sheriff's manager, lieutenant, will be vetted, the call will be vetted to ensure there are elements of a crime or someone other than the mental health subject is in danger.
This decision follows the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals ruling, which determined that law enforcement officers no longer have legal protection when responding to a call where no crime is being committed.
This is a video you've all been waiting for, as it's just been released after the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals has ruled that the 2 Las Vegas police officers have been stripped of their qualified immunity after detaining Roy Scott on a mental health hold, which brings up the question, should officers respond to mental health calls? This is the Shots Fired podcast. I'm Mark Redlich. This is Kyle Schoberg, and we've got Scott Savage in studio with us, owner of Savage Training Group, to help us break down this video and help us understand what qualified immunity is and why or if officers should even respond to these calls.
Scott, thanks for being in studio with us. This new Ninth Circuit decision has everybody torqued up, confused. You are very knowledgeable with it. Help us break this down. What happened?
Yeah, I think being a police officer in the Ninth Circuit, as your viewers probably imagine, is so complex, and we have to be our own legal advocates and constantly research this stuff. But you know what? We, the Savage Training Group, travel across the United States teaching cops, and I often hear, cops who are not in the Ninth Circuit say, well, that's just Ninth Circuit. That doesn't apply to me. Well, here's the thing. We look up cases in those other circuits and find similar cases. So it's not just that wacky Ninth Circuit, although they are oftentimes wacky, but also other circuits quote the Ninth Circuit. And the other circuits are saying, well, the Ninth Circuit said this, and they use it to inform their ruling. So it's super important, no matter where you're a cop, to at least hear out what's going on in the Ninth Circuit, because unfortunately, this may be coming your way as well.
Put it down. Put it down. Put that down. Hey, put that down right now. I ain't fucking with you. Put that down. Okay, not that. That was not your phone. Let's go. Get down here.
What am I supposed to do?
Come down over here.
What am I supposed to do?
Come down over here. Put your phone down. Right here.
What?
Put your phone down so he can. Hey, stop.
What are you doing, man?
We're trying to talk to you to figure out what the hell's going on.
Make sure you have any other weapons on you, all right? I don't have any weapons.
He's gonna pat you down for weapons. Keep your hands out of your pocket.
There you go. I'm sorry.
Put that shit down.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Watch out. Turn around. Turn around. Turn around.
I got paranoid schizophrenia.
Okay.
I get it. That's fine. Just turn around so I can pat you down, okay?
Can you just put me in the car, please?
Hey, right now we're just trying to talk to you so we can figure out what's going on.
Can you just put me in the car, please? Sorry.
Yeah, we'll
Okay.
get you some help, but you gotta listen to us, dude.
Yeah, listen to us so we can help you.
But you shine the light in my face, I
Okay,
can't.
man, you come out carrying a pipe down the thing, and then you just pull a knife out of your pocket when I just told you not to put your hands in your pockets, right?
I think people are after me, man.
Okay, well, just relax. My partner's going to pat you down, make sure you don't have any weapons, okay?
Oh.
Just do me a favor, just turn around, and we'll take the light off, okay?
Face the wall.
Turn around.
I'm paranoid, sir.
I got you. You're fine.
I can't.
No, do not take your shirt off.
Hey, because I'm... Please, sir. Please. Please.
He's going to make sure you don't have any weapons.
Please, sir. Please.
Hey,
please.
step up here.
Oh, sir, please.
Step up here. Step up here.
Why y'all doing this?
Step up here.
Why y'all doing
Step
this?
up here. Stop.
What? What are you
Hey,
doing?
stop.
Stop.
Sir,
Stop.
what are you doing?
Stop. Stop.
Sir, please.
Stop. Stop.
Please,
Stop.
sir.
Stop.
What are you
Hey.
doing?
Hey.
Sir.
Get this on.
Please.
Hey, stop.
No.
Stop. 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 What are you doing?
Stop. Stop it. Please.
Stop.
Stop, please, sir.
DC-91, give us a
Please,
call.
sir.
We have subjects who came out and resisting us. Hey,
Just
Please.
don't you kick me. We're going to have a problem if you kick me.
Oh.
You understand?
What will you do?
Let's do this.
Stop.
Leave me alone.
Let's sit you up.
Leave me alone.
Hey,
You like
Sir.
everybody.
Oh.
Stop.
stop.
Ah.
Stop.
Ah.
Calm down.
Ah. Ah. Wow. Ah. Ah. Wow.
Stop.
Why are you doing it? Ah. Why
I got this.
are
I got his arm.
Why are you doing it?
Got a cup?
Ah.
What?
Ah. Ah.
Stop. Stop.
Ah. 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 Ah.
Hey! Stop! Stop trying to grab me. Stop resisting.
Get them hands.
Stop resisting. Stop! Stop! Stop grabbing.
Break down the initial video that sparked this entire decision that was made, starting back in 2019 with the Las Vegas Police Department to where we are now.
Yeah, March 3rd, 2019, average patrol call. Gentleman named Roy Scott calls 911 and reports there's people outside his house, maybe a prowling or something like that. Now, the dispatcher's probably keyed up on the fact this could be a mental health type of issue, but still, someone calls and reports there's people outside my house and they're trying to harm me. We're all going to respond to that call still. So Las Vegas Metro does what most agencies would do, dispatches 2 officers out to the house. The officers go out there, knock on the door, try to make contact with this gentleman. They're hearing him through the door. He's saying things like, you got to get me out of here. You got to help me, that kind of stuff. They're trying to tell him, it's all on body cam. Hey, buddy, come on out. We want to help you. Not getting any response. He won't come out or he's declining to come out. So now we're like, well, okay, this guy is reporting that there were people trying to harm him and now he's not coming out. We know he's inside. We just heard him. So we feel a moral obligation to try to help this man. They try. The officers do a great job. You know what? Let me call the supervisor. Let me call the sergeant and run this by him because they realize this is one of those calls, those welfare check type calls that often ends in problems, right? It's not the big active shooters that we're often jammed up for. It's these little like welfare checks. They call the sergeant. Sergeant's like, well, we can't do much if the guy's not going to come out. We're not going to force entry into this house if we're thinking this is a mental illness call. And the officers on body cam did say their radio code for, hey, I think this is a mental illness call. So the sergeant tells them, give it another try. At least give it another try. They try to get him out, and eventually Roy Scott, the gentleman, does come out of the house holding a metal pipe. Officers do a great job. Hey, drop the pipe. They don't overreact. There's no use of force. Drop the pipe, which he does. And he's kind of saying things that are letting keying up the officers that this is probably a mental illness situation. Gentleman's living in a second-story apartment. Comes down the stairs. Officers wait down on the stairs. Are contacting him. They ask him, hey, you don't have any other weapons, do you? Yeah, actually, I've got this knife. Pulls out a knife, hands it to the officers, not blade first, handle first, which is later mentioned in the court case when the court tries to say this is man's of no danger, okay? So he had a pipe, he's got a knife. What's your training tell you about when a person has one weapon what's your training tell you?
There's 2.
Sure. You're not just gonna be like, well, we got all the guns off of him if he got, or he got all the knives. We're gonna obviously want to search this gentleman. Law allows us to search him. Good tactics dictates we search him. So the officers do exactly what any of us would have done, which is say, hey man, we want to get you some help. Need you to turn around so that I can, search you. Mr. Scott, Roy Scott, who later we find out is mentally ill, puts his back up against the wall and says, I don't want to turn around. Okay. And they're like, no, you got to turn around. Got to put your hands behind your back. We got to search you. No, I don't want to turn around. Can you just take me to the car? Just take me to the car. No, we can't just take you to the car. You got to turn around. So now we're in a little bit of a standoff, right? The only way to safely search this man is to turn him around, hold his hands behind his back, and start pat searching him. He doesn't want to do that. So eventually the officers grab him gently. They don't tackle him or anything like that. They're just kind of trying to low key this thing, which is, hey buddy, let us just search you. Come on. And 9 times out of 10, that will work perfectly. You grab the guy, you put his hands behind his back. We're not trying to hurt you, sir. We do need to search you. That didn't work. Immediately, he starts resisting their efforts. He somehow ends up on the ground. Now, the video camera, it's hard to see exactly what happens. Of course, the gentleman's estate, because he later dies, says that he was thrown to the ground, tripped to the ground, hit the ground hard. The officers say, we pushed him to the ground. Not a big kind of thing. Neither here nor there. He's now on the ground. They're trying to tell him to calm down. hey, buddy, stop resisting, stop doing whatever you're doing, because this whole thing is he hasn't committed a crime. They want to take him into custody for a mental health hold. In California, we call it 5150. In every other state, it's basically the same. Florida's called the Baker Act. All this is that the law allows us to temporarily detain someone when they're a danger to themselves, danger to others, gravely disabled as a result of a mental disorder. It allows us, the police, although they haven't committed a crime, to take them into custody and deliver them to some kind of mental institution or a hospital or something. That's what the officers are trying to do here in their community caretaking function. Is this man is not of sound mind. He's perhaps a danger to himself. We're going to act on his behalf, take him into custody against his will, and restrain him. The problem comes in how we do that. As they're trying to get him secured, get him into custody, get his hands behind his back, he's struggling. Initially, he's on his back and looking up at the officers. They turn him over because that's the only way to detain someone. He goes on his stomach. The officers are using body weight to gain control of this man and to put him into custody, finish the search, get him delivered to the hospital. About 2 minutes, I think, is what the court ruled, is what they believe the officer, Smith, that's the Smith in the Scott versus Smith, has his knee on the gentleman's torso and perhaps his neck, right? How much weight was being put on there? Well, that's something that the court will argue over, trying to figure out exactly, because I could put my knee on your torso right now, your neck, and then not
Apply
exert
pressure.
any,
Yeah.
how much? Well, one side's going to say not much. The other side's going to say a whole lot. And the gentleman, as they're trying to get him into custody, starts saying he's having trouble breathing, right? We've heard this before, As they're trying to get him secured, he becomes unconscious. Then later dies or stops breathing while in custody. This went from a nothing call, like a welfare check, kind of big nothing in the scale of priority calls, to now we have an in-custody death of a man who hasn't committed a crime. That's what started this process. That's the initial call in the Scott versus Smith incident.
In simple terms, tell everybody, or just describe to everybody, because a lot of cops don't even know the answer to this, what is qualified immunity?
Well, qualified immunity doesn't just apply to cops, it applies to government officials. So these perhaps government officials that want to get rid of qualified immunity, we have to remind them that covers you as well. So I'm not sure they know that. But in a nutshell, this, of course, ended in a lawsuit. Like, you knew that was coming, right? The family sues the officers, sues the agency, sues the chief, and alleges that there's been a deprivation of rights. She sues, saying there's a Fourth Amendment, she being the family member of the decedent, sues the officers and says there's a Fourth Amendment deprivation case there, which is you, me, and everyone else has the right against unreasonable search and seizure by the government. In this case, the police, and the estate is saying you infringed on that right because you unlawfully seized him or killed him. In this case, it was an unlawful use of force. She also said there was a 14th Amendment, which that deprivation, but that was later thrown out. So we'll just focus on the fourth. When this goes before a civil court, the officers are going to say, we are immune from prosecution. We are immune from prosecution because of a variety of laws. And the court has to say, are you actually immune or not? And the way they do that is a two-pronged test. Is there a potential constitutional violation? And was that constitutional right clearly established before? In other words, was there a similar, not exactly similar, but similar case that said these officers, we've already established that when you do what you did, that's a constitutional violation. And if that's true, it's clearly established, then you don't have qualified immunity because you should have known, because we already said that there was a constitutional violation there. So constitutional violation that is clearly established at the time, if that's you and you did something that's similar, the courts are going to say you don't have immunity. Now, cops seem to think that's where it ends. Well, he lost qualified immunity. Well, are these officers in jail? Are they being, did they pay out of money? Did the age? No, because it's going back to court. You lost immunity, meaning this will now proceed in a trial. We're just going to court now. So the officers still have a chance to argue, well, okay, you're alleging that I deprived this person of their rights. Here's why I didn't do that. and they may prevail in trial. It just means that it's going to trial. So when an officer loses qualified immunity, yes, we want to be aware of that. But here's the other thing. Remember what that second prong was. It has to be clearly established. If you read Scott v. Smith, and if you're a cop, I hope you're reading some of these case law, all it does is quote an earlier case. All it does is, like, its majority quotes an earlier case called Drummond versus City of Anaheim, where Disneyland is. That's where Anaheim is, right? All it does is quote Drummond v. Anaheim 2003, where the officers did an action which the court says is similar, used body weight to compress a person who hasn't committed a crime. This was another 5150 or mental health hold in front of a 7-Eleven. They're trying to take him in custody. Officers from Anaheim used body weight on the gentleman. He, suffers from that, and later says, they say, hey, this is a constitutional violation. He actually survived that case. So they lost qualified immunity because of a clearly established case showing that body weight can be deadly force. So that's the qualified immunity thing that's going on here.
Okay, so that explains what qualified immunity is. So people are very spun up over this in the Ninth Circuit. You've got police chiefs, you got sheriffs who have come out and said we are no longer responding to mental health calls anymore because they're under the impression that their officers or deputies have or will lose their qualified immunity and have the opportunity to be prosecuted in court. So the question is, should law enforcement officers stop responding to call for services regarding mentally ill people?
No, this is my opinion. My opinion is it doesn't have to be A or B. It's not a binary decision. It's not either we go to mental health calls or we don't go to mental health calls. I think there's a C, which is we go to some and we don't go to some. If you are interested in this case, and you do any research, you'll quickly notice that the Sacramento County Sheriff's Office here in California came out very strongly after this case was decided and said, we are no longer responding to certain mental illness calls. They will, in fact, still respond to calls when a crime is occurring, has occurred, or there is a immediate danger to a third party, okay? However, if you think about it, even though this, Sacramento Sheriff is saying this is, we're not probably going to respond to these calls after this incident, they probably would have still gone to this call. So this call they would have gone to, which is, a gentleman calls and says there's people outside my house that are trying to harm me. So it's almost like it's not really apples and apples in this one, but be that as it may, they're not the first agency to do this. They're by no means the first agency to say we're not responding to these types of calls. Matter of fact, Placer County SO in California was one of the first to say, we're not responding on anything that we think is a suicide by cop call. And there's a great article in the LA Times about that. What happens if the police stop responding? But anyway, so Sacramento SO says we're not going to certain types of calls. That is an option, right? An option for agencies. And the more as we go by that officers are facing not only civil exposure, but criminal exposure for using force on someone who hasn't committed a crime, you're going to see more of that, which is agencies saying, okay, I understand that even body weight can be considered deadly force. Why am I putting my officers in this position, right? So if body weight can be deadly force, why am I putting my officers in this position? Perhaps we shouldn't be in that position, and we'll do what Sacramento SO is doing, refer calls to the suicide hotline, refer calls to a psychological emergency response team.
So can you explain to everybody what are the legal ramifications by not going to a mental health call?
Strictly speaking, legally, there's none because of something called the public duty doctrine, which you can look up. And if you're a police officer, just look up public duty doctrine in your state. It is a national standard, which basically says the police don't have an affirmative legal obligation to protect third parties. So there is no such thing as a legal requirement to respond to 911 calls. It is very much in the purview of the agency, police chief, sheriff, to say, we're not going to this call, we're not going to this type of call. Now, obviously, there's some moral obligations there, right? The police have a moral obligation to try to render aid to mentally ill people who are not able to take care of themselves or potentially a threat to someone else, but that's a moral discussion. Your question is the legality of it. The legality of it is basically the public duty doctrine prevents that obligation.
All right, so my next question is, an officer gets dispatched to a mental health call. So you show up, someone is detainable for a mental health evaluation. They say, I'm not going with you. I don't want to go. Now what? Are you walking away from that? Should cops walk away from that? Should they apply some level of force to try to get that person into, I won't use the word custody, but detainment and handcuffs? Because that's been past practice, which is what we saw in this Las Vegas video, where they did use some level of force to get him into handcuffs. And so I guess officers are wanting to know, when someone is refusing to go with you to the hospital, should you just disengage and walk away at that point?
Yeah, I mean, there's a ton of case law out there in all the circuits that talk about using force on someone who hasn't committed a crime. So to answer that question, I would just say, well, is it even legal to use force to take someone against their will on a mental health hold? Answer, yes, absolutely yes. Even in the Ninth Circuit, if you read Scott v. Smith, the other case we mentioned, Drummond v. Anaheim, or cases like Diorel versus Rutherford, or even going outside of the Ninth Circuit, plenty of other cases as well, it says, like the phrase you just said, some degree of force is permissible in this situation. However, it's that degree which is the issue, right? And so if I were me, a police officer in 2025, and I'm taking someone who hasn't committed a crime, I want to take them on a mental health hold, and they say, I don't want to do that, and we try talking to them, we try offering de-escalation, we try everything else, and eventually we're going to go hands-on. I may attempt to go hands-on, like, hey, buddy, hey, pal, why don't you let us just kind of, and if I get any resistance, yes, I would walk away. I would actually stop my trying to overcome his resistance. However, to do that, you have to train officers to do that. Because if you've ever been in any situation in your 20 years of being a cop, you ever been in a training scenario where the role player resists
Yeah, and you disengage.
and you walk away?
No.
Like, you know what I mean? If you just grab my arm right now in a scenario and I pulled my arm back, have you ever been in a scenario where you're like, oh, okay, sounds like you don't want to go, and then walk away?
Oh, yeah, absolutely not.
So if that's what people want to do, and I don't know what the answer is. I mean, there's 18,000 police agencies, so choose whichever one, whatever you want to do. I don't care what you want to do. However, you better train cops to perform that, because just coming out with a policy saying, oh, hey, Kyle, the policy now is if they offer any resistance, we're not going to do anything. That's a piece of paper. Like, the minute the cops go hands-on, they're going to do what they've always done, which is overcome resistance. And they're going to go, the law allows us to do it, which it does. So the problem is, and maybe some agencies are going, I didn't want my cops to have to think about that. It's too legally complex, so let's just not be there.
Makes sense. I mean, I get it. I get it from both standpoints. And when you read this and it says that you are allowed to use some level of force to get them to detain them, that truly is dependent on the person's level of resistance. And that's the tricky part. And I like the fact that you say, hey, I might make the attempt to go hands-on with somebody, but the moment they pull away, they start resisting, that's only going to escalate things. And that's where I would say, yeah, I'm going to back off of this and we're done here. Yeah. And barring some wild circumstance where maybe a weapon's now been presented, which sometimes happens, then maybe I would move forward and, escalate my level of force. But yeah, I agree. And I think we should offer the viewers some tips on how to handle, maybe mental health calls. And that's, something that I like to do is we get a lot of these, every agency does. And I'll, drop a phone call into that person, talk to them on the phone. Maybe I'll go around the block from the house, but I'm not going to the house. I'll park down the street, drop a phone call in, maybe get a couple officers staged in case the person wants to come out. But I like to have that phone call conversation if I can get a hold of them. And that's pretty telling on the phone when you say who you are and, hey, we're here to help. Do you want to come outside? And they say no. All right, we'll make some attempts. But at the end of the day, if they say no, we're walking away from that. If the person does come outside, they're agitated, your presence alone is only amping them up. Again, I think that's where already having that distance and not closing that in gives you a pretty good gauge of what this person intentions are. And again, if I'm getting that level of behavior, I can see that from down the street, couple houses down. I don't need to be right on top of the person. And again, maybe try to talk to them. But if I'm not getting anywhere, then that's when we're going to walk away. So I think there are things that you can do to prevent putting yourself in that situation, but also still try to go and help these people out and offer services without being right on top of them.
Yeah, I like to say in some of our training classes, I like to say, let's help the people who want to be helped. So if you want our help, let's help you.
Mm-hmm.
But if we're trying to force ourselves into some situation where someone doesn't want our help, although altruistic and doing things for the right reason, where you're trying to force your way to someone's house and the family's like, this is a family situation. I don't want you guys to be involved with our mentally, ill family member. Why are we forcing ourselves to help people who don't want our help, right? And I just think, those tactics you're mentioning are perfect. Use a phone, use the drone, use whatever, use some standoff way of contacting someone and being like, do you want our help? And if the guy's like, screw you, I'm going to shoot you if you come in here. Okay, roger that. We're not doing that.
Yeah.
And I think just, for the cops out there, if you spend a little time just like reading some of these cases, you start to understand how the courts view it. Because, Scott and Kyle can give you our opinions of what we think you should do. But ultimately, to me, the most important opinions out there are the courts, right? And they are crystal clear. Like, they're not ambiguous about this. They're like, here's how we're going to judge your force. If you use force on someone who hasn't committed a crime, we're going to look at the person's Fourth Amendment privacy interests versus what they call the countervailing governmental interests. Like, what are you trying to accomplish? If you're trying to arrest some murder suspect who's just, killed a bunch of people and he's in an open air and he's fleeing from you and he's got the gun, like, you're good. Like, that's a high, governmental interest. But if all you're trying to do is take someone to the hospital on a mental health hold, who, by the way, will be released prior to you even completing the paperwork, and they're in their own home and they don't want help and there's no one else in danger, and the best you can come up with as an officer is you're like inventing some hypothetical harm theory where it's like, well, he could get a gun and he could use it against the neighbors and he could do this. The court does not support you. So it's great that you want to help this person, but you have to understand the rules of what we're playing. And sometimes in our industry, it's all about tactics, and our tactics should be informed by the rules, not the other way around, right?
Yeah, it's pretty wild. You travel, over the course of the country and talking to different agencies about this topic, and almost everybody has a different answer or theory on, when would you walk away, not walk away? I mean, you have agencies who are flat out like, we are not walking away from a suicidal subject armed with a gun in their own home, nobody else in danger. They're not walking away from that, and sometimes creating their own exigency. And so it is a complex topic. I think people don't quite understand it, and I don't believe there is a black and white answer to this whole thing. Just because this Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals case came out, I still don't think there's a black and white answer, and I think all it did is spin people up and confuse people even more. But I think people need to read it, and again, I think there's ways to still be able to respond to these types of calls to help people, but mitigate the risk of putting yourself in a situation where it potentially could backfire on you at the same time. And so I think that's the gray area of all of this. So again, I would never say, yes, you should go. No, you should not go. I think it's all case and call dependent, but it's a great conversation. Tell people about the link we're going to put in the description of this video where they can read these case laws, have access to all of this through your website.
Yeah, well, just what you said is this question always comes up as we travel around the nation, like providing training. Like, we'll just ask students, hey, can you use force on someone who hasn't committed a crime? And you start to hear all this like, well, maybe, kind of stuff. It's like, whoa, we got to get clear on that. And I was not clear on that before. And so we did a mountain of research into this thing, and we've got some case law written down, and we created this document. It's called Is It Ever Legal to Use Force on Someone Who Hasn't Committed a Crime? And it's designed for cops. It's just little snippets of quotes from different circuits. So there's 9th, 4th, 10th, all that is in there. And we've got, wherever we've been able to find that stuff, we've put it in, and we're constantly evolving it. So put a link, in the notes on this. And if you're a cop, you got to be a police officer to get access to this. But go to the link, download this, double check it. It's not legal advice. Make sure it's all quoted correctly. Contact your legal advisor and all that stuff. But at least start reading some of this stuff, because I'm telling you, once you start understanding how the court views our tactics, it's a game changer, because it makes you start to rethink everything we're doing in the field.
Yeah, it is a tool to help you out and further your knowledge on this particular topic, because it is interesting. Welcome back from your coughing attack, having to step out
Oh, did you share
good?
that? Thanks.
Yeah. Well, it was on. Well, when we have an empty seat, yeah, people are gonna be like, "Where'd Mark go?" So it's all good. Well, shoot, Scott. I mean, we probably could talk forever about this topic. I mean, I know this case upset a lot of people, and again, there is no black and white answer, but hopefully this provides a little bit more clarity to people. I know it does for me, still being in law enforcement. So thank you for doing that, and that's all I got.
Thanks for coming in, Scott. I appreciate it. Sorry I had to step out for a little bit. Stay
good.
healthy.
Yes, sir.
Sick. Mark is
Yeah.
sick, who then now got me sick, and
Oh,
sorry, when you leave here, we didn't tell you before you got here, but
You're
we
definitely
should,
sick.
I should have had you sign a disclaimer.
well,
You're
damn.
probably gonna get sick.
You're close to Kyle. I wouldn't get you sick. You're close to
You
Kyle.
just hacked on all of us the whole time. Anyways, all right, guys, thank you for watching. We'll see you on the next video.
See ya.
Bye.